Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive, rapidly escalating puzzle, the spectrum of modern conflict between the US, China, and Taiwan. To really help us wrap our heads around this, we've put together a truly beautiful visual explainer for you. We're gonna let the data, the maps, and the direct source materials tell the story. There's a lot of noise out there right now, but by focusing strictly on the structured information, we can objectively trace the evolution of modern warfare, from invisible influence campaigns all the way up to industrial mass production. Let's get into it. Now, to really understand China's modern strategy, we actually need to rewind a few thousand years. We have to look at the ancient philosopher Lao Tzu and his concept of shi. It's basically about shaping the external environment to mold the objects within it. In a military context, like the famous strategist Sun Tzu expanded on later, it means creating a situation where you possess such overwhelming positional and psychological advantage that direct combat might not even be necessary. It's wild to think about, but the victory is essentially won by shaping the environment before a single shot is ever fired. So here's how we're going to decode this today. We'll move step by step up the spectrum of conflict. 1. The grand strategy. 2. The cognitive battlefield. 3. Mastering the gray zone. 4. The drone hellscape. And finally, 5. The industrial defense gap. Alright, kicking things off with Section 1, the grand strategy, pursuing comprehensive national power. And that takes us right into Section 2, the cognitive battlefield, winning the war before it starts. So right at the absolute center of the Chinese Communist Party's goals is this idea of the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation by 2049. They want to lead the world in comprehensive national power. And guess what? Pursuing that power begins entirely in the invisible realm. The People's Liberation Army, the PLA, is heavily, and I mean heavily, investing in what they call cognitive domain operations, or CDO. Now, this isn't your grandfather's propaganda flyer. CDO blends traditional psychological warfare with bleeding-edge tech, AI, big data, even neuroscience. The goal here is literal cognitive subversion. They want to change how foreign populations and senior leaders perceive reality, shaping their decisions without them ever even realizing it's happening. Just look at this global scorecard from the 2024 Pew Survey. It's a really clear picture of how these whole-of-government influence operations are actually playing out. Notice how in Western and allied nations, places like the US, Japan, Australia, unfavorable views of China are sky high, sitting well above 80%. Let's scan a little further down the chart. Look at regions in Africa and Southeast Asia, countries like Nigeria, Kenya, and Thailand. There, favorable views absolutely dominate, hanging out in the 70s and 80s. It's a perfect snapshot of how Beijing's borderless information controls and tailored cognitive campaigns are landing very differently across the globe. So how exactly are they pulling this off? Well, PLA researchers have openly stated that generative AI is a total game changer. It's a low-cost, high-impact way to manipulate the information environment. They're using large language models right now to smash through foreign language barriers, generating authentic-sounding text at an unbelievable scale. And it gets even wilder. Since at least 2011, they've been developing voice information synthesis, basically deepfake tech, specifically designed to mimic foreign senior leaders. The tactical goal is pretty alarming. They want to inject highly realistic, synthetic media right into an adversary's information ecosystem to mislead decision makers and completely shatter domestic trust. Moving from the invisible to the physical, we hit Section 3, mastering the gray zone, coercion below the threshold of armed conflict. Looking at this beautifully detailed map of the fiercely contested South China Sea, we can see the gray zone in actual practice. China has literally poured millions of tons of sand onto submerged reefs, covertly turning these empty features into artificial islands complete with airfields. It's like a giant puzzle they're building in real time. This dramatically expands their military operational reach, but because they do it so incrementally, often hiding behind civilian or commercial facades, it systematically squeezes the territorial breathing room of neighbors like the Philippines and Vietnam, all without ever triggering a formal armed conflict. These gray zone tactics are incredibly diverse. Honestly, deception is the name of the game here. We're talking about deploying the armed maritime militia, which uses massive steel-hulled vessels designed specifically to ram competing ships, all while dressed up to look like ordinary civilian fishing boats. They're also using electronic warfare to scramble competitors' navigation systems. We've even seen the covert severing of critical undersea telecommunications cables near Taiwan, like the suspected sabotage by a disguised ship called the Shunxin 39. Again, the whole strategy is about shaping the physical environment and applying intense pressure while deliberately stopping just shy of that red line of outright war. what happens if that deterrence actually fails? That brings us to Section 4, the drone hellscape. It turns through precise maps. If that line into armed conflict is crossed, the U.S. and its allies have a very specific operational concept ready to counter a massive invasion force. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command starkly calls it the hellscape, and this strategy is a total paradigm shift. Imagine flooding the operational zone, like the Taiwan Strait, with a massive, highly coordinated swarm of autonomous drones. Unmanned aerial vehicles, surface ships, subsea vehicles, all working together at the exact same time to gather intel, lay mines, and completely overwhelm adversary aircraft and ships. The goal is to make the strait literally impassable. The sheer scale of this concept is absolutely breathtaking when you compare it to historical naval battles. Now, to actually pull off a hellscape, you need a sobering volume of hardware. Just take a look at these proxy numbers, which are based on recent estimates from the war in Ukraine, a conflict that's basically serving as a grim preview for modern drone warfare. For your basic FPV drones, the ones used for tactical strikes, we're seeing estimated monthly production rates of 600,000 to 800,000 units, and they cost just $400 to $700 a pop. Even the more advanced interceptor drones are being churned out by the tens of thousands. The sheer mathematical scale required to sustain this kind of fight is almost hard to wrap your head around. And that brings us to a massive shift in the economics of modern warfare. On one side, you've got traditional assets. We're talking multi-million-dollar, fifth and sixth generation manned fighter jets. Yes, they're incredibly capable, but they're highly expensive, they're painfully slow to replace, and most importantly, they put human lives at risk. But on the other side, you have a triple of unmanned systems. The one-way attack drone, the FLM-136 Luca, costs around $35,000. It's totally expendable. You can launch thousands of them at once to overwhelm air defenses. This right here is the definitive moving away from this high-value legacy assets and moving toward cheap, scalable platforms that deliver overwhelming, precise mass. Which leads us to our final point, Section 5, Industrial Defense Gap, preparing for a protracted conflict. Here's the stark reality. Relying on a drone hellscape for deterrence requires an immense, highly responsive manufacturing. Right now, there is a massive gap in that capability. Defense analysts are making it very clear. To achieve this level of deterrence, we absolutely have to see a massive revitalization of the U.S. and Taiwanese industrial bases. We're talking huge capital expenditures to build out entirely new unmanned supply chains. It's basically a societal and economic shift, putting the defense industry on a wartime footing. A lot of experts are even calling for a modern-day defense production board, directed right from the top by the president, to smash through bureaucratic logjams and tap into the rapid production expertise of the private sector so we can surge manufacturing where